morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where yesterday Fox's Marvel division stumbled with two nightmare headlines. Like, wow, I feel so bad for their PR department. You know what? I just kind of feel bad for Fox's Marvel division in general with these headlines because they seem to foreshadow disastrous turns of event for the studio, which is a real shame because up until yesterday, Fox's Marvel division seemed like they were on fire with a fantastic showing at Comic-Con where they showcased primarily Deadpool and X-Men Apocalypse. Well, those are the two movies that got most of the headlines, and to be fair, those two movies aren't involved in these disastrous headlines, so maybe they're still good. And on that note, a Deadpool trailer is supposed to hit any day now, an official one, and Fox sure could use it to take people's minds off of these headlines. Now, they're going to be the first two stories of the day, and we could go chronological in the order that the stories broke, but I think we're going to start with the bigger one, and that's the one that broke late last night. Via an article on The Wrap, one of the top Hollywood trades, which reported a rumor that Fox and Channing Tatum are currently in negotiations to keep him involved in the movie. He wants to walk. Fox is seeing if they can keep him on board. That's all we know. And the reason I stress that is because we don't really know the nature of the discussions. Now, I think that it's easy to assume that Channing Tatum's like, I want out. I've changed my mind. I don't want to be Gambit. But that seems a little bit odd considering the fact that he really, really wanted to be Gambit. Like, he's a big Gambit fan. It was largely his idea. He just was at Comic-Con promoting the Gambit film, part of the Marvel Fox panel. So he's been really, really on board with this. And this isn't like something like, oh, I signed a contract, but my heart's not in it. You know, this was like an obligation that I have to the studio, et cetera, et cetera. He really wants to genuinely be Gambit. And they said in the report that they were even testing actresses for an undisclosed role, but I would assume, you know, either Belladonna, the Juliet to Remy LeBeau's Romeo between the Thieves and Assassins Guild, because Leah Seydoux from Blue is the Warmest Color, but also the upcoming Spectre movie was the name they mentioned as testing, but also potentially for Rogue. Channing Tatum. See, I'm already calling him Gambit. I was on board with this, but he'd already said that Rogue was going to at least appear in the film, which was very exciting. I was really looking forward to this movie, and while some people, when this news broke, were like, thank goodness, he's a horrible Gambit. I'm glad he's not going to ruin that character. I was like, no, I think that there's a chance he could pull it off, especially if you saw Jupiter Ascending, because one of the only good things in Jupiter Ascending was Channing Tatum's performance. Now, the thing here might be is that Fox might have seen the budget that broke the day, early yesterday or the day before, the $150 million number that was reported by the state of Louisiana. Thanks a lot, state of Louisiana. I suspect you torpedoed this deal. And Fox might have done like a double take and been like, how much are we spending on the Gambit movie? As I reported, as we discussed yesterday, that's really just too much money to spend on a Gambit movie, especially in the wake of Ant-Man, because Ant-Man was a similar kind of movie about a superhero thief, and on a smaller scale than the other films in the comic book, franchise for said studio. In that case, the MCU. Here, for Fox's Marvel brand. So I actually would really do a double take at a $150 million budget. I'd be like, how do you expect me to make this back, especially after Jupiter Ascending? Channing Tatum is still not at the point yet where he is a guaranteed, box office performer. So there's no way they should spend that much money on Gambit. So that's, in my opinion, how this negotiation started to break down. That would be my guess, where Fox calls up Channing Tatum and goes, there's no way I'm spending $150 million on this movie. And then Channing Tatum going, well, then I don't know if I want to do it because, I want to make sure that this film, I hope this is Channing Tatum's response, not, that's what you gotta pay me, yo! I hope his response is, well, I need that money for great visual effects and camera work, et cetera, to make sure this is done properly. But this movie is, like, ready to go. It has a director, Rupert Wyatt. It's got all the locations being set up, has a casting call gone out. Again, as we discussed yesterday, it's supposed to start shooting in Louisiana in October. I mean, it was all ready to go. So the only thing that I can imagine is gives cause for concern is that budget. Now, how did this story leak, right? Like, who leaked it? Was someone at Fox, just like, who was a big comic book fan, being like, fans must know that the movie is in jeopardy? Or did one side decide to use this as pressure to maybe get the negotiations to move forward? And I would assume it's Channing Tatum, right? I mean, why would Fox, unless they want, I mean, I think it would hurt them to try and get the word out there that, people don't necessarily care if Channing Tatum is Gambit, right? I mean, like, how does that convince them to keep him on board? So my guess would be that they're like, Channing Tatum's team is like, let's leak this to the press, have the fans get into a tizzy about how they really want a Gambit movie, and then Fox will acquiesce and give us our budget. But that kind of didn't work, because again, a lot of people tweeted, oh good, I don't want a Gambit spin-off, solo movie, there are other characters more worthy, Channing Tatum isn't a good Gambit. I mean, if I were a Fox executive checking the Twitter feed, as every studio executive should, they shouldn't have that dictate all their choices, but it should definitely be a factor, I would be like, yeah, I'm definitely not spending $150 million on this movie now. But I really do think that it's a genuine problem. I'll be curious to see what happens, but I think in a post-Ant-Man world, you just simply can't release that film at that budget. So will it fall apart? Will they replace him? I think it's going to be difficult because Channing Tatum was also producing the movie. So to rip him out of it, or for him to remove himself, would really, take out the spine of the project. So that's the first devastating headline for Fox of the day. Now, what was the other one? Well, this came earlier in the day when it was divulged that the review embargo for Fantastic Four is pretty much the day of release, which is a horrible, horrible sign for any movie, right? Now, this was my hope, and I saw some of you tweet it to me as well, that maybe they're just protecting like a great spoiler and they don't want it to get out, right? But I don't think so. I think if there was something that amazing, it would already have leaked to some degree. Even people, there's always someone who saw the film at like an early junket screening or something who will, divulge it. And the fact that the review embargo has even been revealed means that somebody has seen the movie. Because usually they don't reveal the embargo date until they start inviting people to screenings, right? So the movie has been screened for someone. And they've been told that you can't review said movie until the day of release. I think that print is the night before, and then video is maybe the day of, or vice versa, but that is a very troubling sign. And also, I have to say, a really surprising sign, because the last trailer for the movie, in my opinion, looked really good. So I've actually been rooting for Fantastic Four, and I was like of the mind that it was going to be not a bad movie. Like, I was like, wow, I'm really excited to see this and see what Josh Trank did. So for Fox to undercut it, I think out of the gate, even before it goes out of the gate, I mean, I would have just run with it. I would be like, you know what, give my movie a bad review. I don't care. Let's just, I'm not going to handicap it myself. Like, let people cripple it if they want to outside of the studio, but I'm going to try and at least help the movie put its best foot forward. But this is very alarming, but we'll see. I mean, the trailers have been so good, and there's so much at stake for this film. It would really be a shame if it fell apart, because what I'm talking about is not just the Fantastic Four property, but also Michael B. Jordan. There's been a lot of, talk about, casting him as Johnny Storm. He's been very vocal about it, and for him and the movie he's in to crash and burn, I think would be a serious step back for diversification in superhero movies. So we'll see how the film does. I'm not totally counting it out even still. I'm hoping we at least have a situation here where a lot of us see the promise. A little bit like a Man of Steel situation, right? Where everyone's like, you know what? Not a great movie, but I like elements of it quite a bit, and I would move forward with this. So I'm hoping that's at least what we get. But again, two horrible headlines for Fox, and I'm curious, what do you think of these developments? It's been rough. It's been a rough period for comic book movies. The only ones right now that seem on top of their game are Warner Brothers and DC. Whoever thought that would happen? Now, the third story of the day, speaking of Warner Brothers and DC, is the reveal that Chris Pine will be playing Steve Trevor, which I am so relieved to hear. There was a rumor going around that was just a smokescreen because he was really up for the role of Hal Jordan in a Green Lantern movie, where they'd also have Jon Stewart and, I'm drawing Guy Gardner, the current Red Lantern. That was going to be the lineup for a Green Lantern movie. And a lot of comic book fans, particularly Green Lantern fans, were like, oh, that's a much better use of Chris Pine. And I was like, I don't think so. I was kind of excited for him to be Steve Trevor. Well, lo and behold, it was an opposite smokescreen, where the Hal Jordan rumors were actually a smokescreen for Steve Trevor. And as people are saying, why would you want to hide the fact that he was playing Steve Trevor? Why would you want a smokescreen for that? I mean, it was reported, and, it's not that big of a surprise. So it just seemed like a lot of subterfuge for no reason. But I thought it was funny that in the press release, they said, don't worry, male fans, Steve Trevor won't just be male eye candy, he's going to have plenty to do. It was very funny. It's often the way they try and describe female roles today to reassure the female audience, being like, don't worry, she'll be a fully realized character that has, her own agenda. And I think it's funny already to see that gender reversal with the Wonder Woman movie, which is kind of what Wonder Woman to some degree is supposed to be all about, right? Now, I couldn't be happier that Steve Trevor will be played by Chris Pine and that he's going to have a really great action-oriented role. As I said when this rumor was first announced that he would be up for the role of Steve Trevor, and you can hear my thoughts about that. I'll put a link at the end of the video to that episode. But I think that for Wonder Woman, the film, the standalone film, to have, male appeal, and not to say that, guys can't appreciate a movie with a female lead. I mean, look how well Lucy did. I think that, Wonder Woman is such like a pro-woman empowerment film that to make that not rub people the wrong way, especially because it has a female director, if you want to keep that narrative from taking hold where it's like, I am woman, hear me roar, everybody else sucks, you got to have Steve Trevor in there, and you have to have someone as personable as Chris Pine. Now, Chris Pine has a little bit of a wonky box office track record, so I hope he doesn't bring the film down in that regard, but he's just so talented that I feel for sure he's not only going to do a great job with Steve Trevor, but create a character that can be an equal, truly, to Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. So I couldn't be more excited for the news, and I think it's another great casting coup for, one of the better casting coups, actually, for Warner Brothers in DC. Now, on to the viewer question of the day. This also has to do with DC, but with their animated universe. This comes from Irian42. And Irian says, frequent BTT viewer, by the way, when you have very memorable avatars, guys, it's very easy for me to keep spotting you, so I love that aspect. Google Plus is kind of going away, but I love the avatars that are so easy to see. It makes it much easier for us to interact, so I hope that doesn't go away. But anyway, Irian42 says, Grace, question. There are many people who don't like how the whole Barbara Gordon thing is handled in The Killing Joke, and that she has no agenda and is only hurt to motivate and to hurt the male characters. Do you think that DC will change that part for the new animated movie? Maybe by not having Commissioner Gordon present in that scene, or having her keep her clothes on, or her being able to call Batman and send him after the Joker, or making her more nuanced in the hospital? Alright, so there's a lot of talk about The Killing Joke lately. There was a cover that they did as an homage to The Killing Joke, and people were really upset about it, and they thought, like, for instance, it glorified rape or something like that. Now, Alan Moore wrote The Killing Joke, and Alan Moore is an incredibly talented and sophisticated writer. And I think that this, I talked about this with the Vacation review actually, just yesterday. How odd that The Killing Joke and the new Vacation movie would actually have a point where they intersect. But I think that this is one of the dangers of, female representation wanting to be improved in movies, right? I guess you could say feminism in cinema. And that you don't want to rob certain, it's a fine line. I mean, I think Harley Quinn is like a character that really walks that fine line, and I think that that's where audiences are divided in David Ayer's interpretation of the character. But, that's a whole other conversation, because it's a conversation in and of itself, because it's so nuanced. But here, women are victims, and horrible things do happen to women just because they're women. There is a story developing that recent shooting in Lafayette happened because that guy was a misogynist and really just, had a problem with women, and that's why he targeted a screening of Trainwreck and killed 2 women. He also shot some men, but it seems that he was aiming largely for women. And you know what? I think that into telling the story of that incident, it wouldn't do anyone justice to be like, oh, well, the women actually in our version are going to fight back, or they rose to the rescue, or trying to add something there. Sometimes people are victims. Even the most brave and heroic people can be caught off guard, and that's really the point of what happens to Barbara Gordon in The Killing Joke. She's Batgirl. She fights crime. She's a vigilante. She's fought the Joker before, but she never suspected him to come to her home, and he didn't come for her. Like when she opens that door, it's such a powerful frame by Brian Boland and Alan Moore in the comic, because she's like, how did he find me? But he's not there for her. He's there for her father, because he is the commissioner of the police. So it's just a horrible, ironic turn of events. And I think that, you don't want to fridge a character, but Barbara Gordon, I don't believe that she is fridged, because she survives, and I think it's very important what happens to the character after that. I mean, I think it's much more egregious that they've gotten rid of Barbara Gordon's handicap and somehow been able to put her back into the Batgirl costume. I mean, that's a good comic, but they should have just made a good comic with Cassandra Cain, or, Stephanie. I think I can't believe I forgot her last name. That's what happens. They don't use these characters enough. Spoiler, but she's a fantastic character, and they could have just gone with that and done pretty much the same comic actually, because she's really a great character as well. But I think that, not everybody is empowered, and not everyone, even who is empowered all the time. So I hope they don't change the Killing Joke. I think it's a great story. I think it's really well done, and it's important to the Batman mythos. So I don't think it's a negative for the Barbara Gordon character, and I think it's, again, a perfect example of, wanting to have strong characters, but, don't change the stories that already exist. Come up with a new story, and also, don't make everyone impervious all the time. That's not how you're going to benefit any demographic. Oh, I think for a while, this was my big pet peeve with female characters, especially in action movies and comic books even. They were always amazing. They always had great, one-liners, and there was no problem they couldn't solve, and you couldn't beat them, and everything that, the white male thought he could do, this other character can do better. Nobody likes that. It's not likable. It's not relatable. I think people want to see people on screen, and people have their highs and lows, and there are moments when they disappoint even themselves, or there's nothing that they can do. So please, DC Animation, don't change the Killing Joke. It's a work of art. It's brilliant. Leave it alone. All right, so I'm curious how you guys feel about not just the Killing Joke specifically, but just the overall idea of altering famous stories to try and, empower different demographics. How do you feel? It's a very sketchy area. It's very sensitive, and I think you have to take each one as it comes, but with the Killing Joke, wouldn't touch it. All right, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for your question, Arian42. Everybody, please write down below how you feel, your thoughts on today's top 3 stories and the viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.